Hey everybody, welcome back to Run and Gun. I'm JT, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to get those cinematic photo edits and achieve that film look with your photography using the Dehancer plugin. Let's jump right into this video. So we are here in Adobe Lightroom Classic. We're looking at a handful of images from my last trip to California that I wanted to give kind of a cool look to. So if we zoom into this photo, you can see we have a cool kind of black and white look. It's a little bit glowy and has some nice grain texture. I really hope that pops up through YouTube's compression, but there's some nice grain texture on this image. I really love the way it turned out. This is here in California in Santa Barbara, and I just found this awesome old VW bus sitting right here on the beach, and I couldn't pass up this image. It looks so cool. I had to snap this shot. So we can go ahead and take a look at the image before I did my editing in Dehancer. So here is what I would call the original image without the Dehancer edits. I just made some minor edits here in Adobe Lightroom. We can also go ahead and we can reset all settings, and you can see here's the raw photo that I took. Command Z. You can see here are some of the initial edits that I made again before taking it into Dehancer and giving it this really cool grainy old film look. It really brings a lot more of the focus towards the VW bus here, and it becomes a much stronger subject in comparison to, as you can see, the original Lightroom edit that is in full color. So let's go ahead and let's open the Dehancer plugin, and I'll show you guys how to get some really cool looking film edits. Let's select another photo here. I really like this image, the opposite side of the VW bus that I found there in Santa Barbara. And all we have to do is right click on the image, edit in Dehancer plugin right here. Or I actually made a little bit of a preset here to open up Dehancer. All you have to do is go to Adobe Lightroom Classic up here in the upper left, go to your preferences, and once your preferences are open, you can select external editing and create a preset for opening up your images in Dehancer. So we can go ahead and close that out, and then go ahead, right click, edit in Dehancer. So now you'll see a little dialog pops up which gives you the option of editing a copy with Lightroom adjustments, editing a copy of the original, or editing the original. 99% of the time, I'm going to keep this top option selected because I've usually done some initial adjustments in Adobe Lightroom. And essentially think of it like baking a cake. Lightroom is all of your ingredients for baking a cake, and Dehancer is like the icing and the sprinkles on top of the cake. So let's go ahead and click edit, and you will see the Dehancer app will open up down here, and our image will pop up here in Dehancer. So as you can see, our Dehancer plugin popped up in a new window here, and I just wanted to apologize in advance for this Dehancer watermark. I actually got pretty sick a couple weeks ago and was waiting for my voice to recover so I could record this review, and unfortunately my promotional license expired that Dehancer provided me, so we're just gonna have this little watermark here while we edit. You can see we can still do all of the editing that we need to. And if you guys want to download a trial of Dehancer, it will also have this watermark until you purchase the full copy. But we can still do all of the editing we want to, and I can still show you guys some awesome images and some awesome film looks that Dehancer can provide you. So let's get right in to playing with this photo. And a quick side note, I'm not going to use every single tool here in Dehancer. Let's go ahead and close some of these. We'll open them up one by one, but I'm going to go through the select ones that I personally use all the time with all of my photos. And remember, Dehancer is that icing on the cake. You don't want to go too overboard with it, or you can absolutely go overboard with it. It's completely up to you and your creative wishes. So let's take a look. On the right hand side here, we can see all of our tools. We can edit our source image. We can change the print. We can expand the dynamic range of our image here. Just double click to reset that slider. Color head, film grain, halation, bloom, vignette, all of kind of standard film terms over here. And on the left hand side here, we actually have some film presets, and you can go through and you can select some different presets, and it will affect how the color of your final image looks. And some of these are really darn close to what actual film looks like. And if you're familiar with how film is going now in 2022, it's quite expensive to shoot. So this is a great alternative for adding some cool looks to your photos, kind of giving that cinematic look to your images without having to blow a bunch of money on film. Now I can also hit the down arrow, which makes this very quick to go through these presets here on the left. I can also hit the up arrow if I want to go back, but sometimes I'll just kind of scroll through, hitting that down arrow and just kind of looking for a certain look that I like. And you can see, let's say for example, I'm looking for Kodak Gold 200. That's one of my favorite films, and Dehancer has a pretty cool preset for that. Ektachrome is also another cool one. Here's Color Plus 200. I'm a big fan of that. And here's Kodak Gold 200. And if you look here on the upper right, we'll switch gears a little bit. We can preview the before and the after. You can see that watermark just pops up on our preview of our image. So we can see what Kodak Gold 200 does. Ektachrome has a little bit of a lighter look. Let's see what else. This Aero Color 4 is something that I really like as well. So again, just kind of go through, find an initial starting look that you like. 250D is a really neat one. So is this Kodak 50D and 500T. So again, go through, find a look that you like. Let's go back to either Kodak Gold or Ektachrome is another one that I'm a huge fan of, just to give us that starting look. And you can see before and after, kind of punches those colors a little bit. And if you're familiar with film, you can push and pull a little bit and underexpose your film, overexpose your film. And again, double click to reset. So these are all of your film profile options that you get to start with. They have some really cool ones like Loma Chrome Purple as well. I think that looks super awesome. Sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked. I have a ton of fun playing around in this app. There's just so many options, and that's why it's one of my new favorite applications. So our source, we can go ahead here on the right, open up these little dialog boxes. We can change the color temperature. I like to warm it up here a little bit. We are in California. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit 1:1. That will zoom into our image, and we can just select kind of a 1:1 preview here to take a look at. And I'll make the screen just a touch bigger so you guys can see everything a little bit better. Awesome, that looks great. And if you have any fringing in your image, you can go ahead and defringe. If you take a look right here, it's getting rid of some of this orange in the tree. When I turn that way up, getting rid of some of that fringing there. Not something I really need to worry about in this photo. Not really seeing any fringing on any high contrast edges. So I think that's pretty good for the source tab. Now we're going to open the expand tab. This is where you're going to play with your dynamic range, and I can turn down the black point a little bit. You can see we're getting a little more detail on the shadows. I can turn down the white point. We're kind of blowing out our highlights. I might want to go in the opposite direction. I don't want to go too far with that, but this is a great tool for expanding your dynamic range a little bit to get that film look. There's also 2 color modes. You're going to have to do some experimenting to see which one works for you. I see that Luma kind of preserves the saturation and color quality a little bit as I'm manipulating these sliders. So that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and close the expand box. So you can actually turn the entire tab off by hitting this little check mark here. So if we want to turn off our expanded dynamic range, just hit that little check box and this whole tab turns off. Let's keep that on for now. Now Dehancer gives us some options here with the print. I typically like to keep this at the Kodak Endura glossy paper, or for a little bit more flatness and expanded dynamic range, the 2383 print film. If we go ahead and zoom out, you can see how that just provides kind of a flatter look. You also have the option of a log look and a linear look. So again, I'll keep this on the Endura glossy paper for right now. That look looks pretty good. And here you can play with more options. If you want to add some contrast, you can turn that up or take your contrast down, make it a little bit more flat. Color density is your color contrast. So we're adding a little bit of saturation in here, taking a little bit of saturation away. I really like this tool. I typically turn this up just a touch and our overall saturation here. And we also have this analog range limiter. I'll go ahead and turn that on. And if you see, I turn the exposure, we don't get this clipping white, we get kind of a gray look. Same thing if we turn down the exposure, we get these kind of lifted shadows versus if we have that off, our shadows turn dark black. And if we have an overexposed image, see it's kind of gray, you get kind of blasted white. So it just kind of keeps your highlights from clipping and keeps your shadows from completely clipping. So I'll reset the exposure. This is kind of up to you whether you want this on or off. I like the little bit of extra contrast. I'm gonna keep that on. And again, we can turn all of these on and off with the check. And we also have a reset button right here. Now let's open color head. This is one I typically don't play with. It's essentially like color balance in Photoshop, turning your image, yellow, blue, different tints, magenta, green, cyan, and red. Again, not something I typically play with. I'll reset that, close this. Now we're getting into the really fun stuff, the stuff that really gives your film or your photos that you want to look like film some character and some texture. So let's start by turning on film grain. You can see film grain immediately appears here on our image, and we have a whole bunch of settings for this film grain that we can tweak to taste. We can make the size of our grain absolutely huge, turn that down. We can really crank up the amount of grain in our image. That looks like it was shot at ISO 1,000,000 and just looks absolutely crazy. You can see that looks crazy here. And I really love the way Dehancer handles film. It's not just slapping an overlay of grain on top of your image. It's like rebuilding your image with the grain, which is really cool. So again, we can turn up that amount just so we can see all of these other settings down here. I want to make sure you guys see this on YouTube. So resolution here is another cool tool. Pay attention to the sharpness around the edges of the bus and these palm trees right here. We'll see how resolution affects those. So if we turn down our resolution, we can see these edges get super blurry. And again, it looks kind of like an out of focus film scan. We've lost all of our detail in the trees. We can go ahead and turn up resolution. Yeah, we have all of our edges back. Everything is nice and crisp and smooth. And we still have all of our detail here in the tree. So this is completely up to you how much detail and how sharp you want your image. I'll usually keep resolution somewhere between 75 and 100%. It just kind of looks a little more like film. Film is very soft, digital is very sharp. So just to add that kind of film look, and also so it doesn't look like digital grain is just being overlaid on top of a digital image. So turn down that resolution just a little bit. It will soften up some of the details and really enhance that film look. Now, another thing that is awesome is you can control the individual shadows and highlights. So if we pay attention to some of the shadows here, we can turn down the grain in our shadows. See our shadows look nice and clean. I typically turn up the grain in the shadows and turn down the grain in the midtones and the highlights. Just make those highlights pop a little bit more. And I think that's looking great. Grain also tends to have a little bit of color to it, so we can turn up the saturation of our grain, or we can turn it down so it's completely monotone or black and white grain. I like adding just a touch of color. And you can see we have the option between negative and positive film types. Just really turns down the effect of that grain. And we also have the option in Dehancer 2.0 of analog and this digital experimental grain. I typically keep mine with analog. I think that looks the best. So that looks great with film grain. We can go ahead, we can close this tab. Now let's take a look at halation, bloom, and vignetting. Now, if you've ever shot cinestill film, you're gonna be very familiar with halation. It's that kind of reddish glow you get around contrasty areas of the film, and it typically appears around lights at night. So let's turn this on. And you can see we start to get this kind of a red glow around these contrasty areas here. You can see between the black and the white, between the green and the blue, and the orange and the blue. And that is really enhancing that kind of film look. Here's the whole image. You can see we have a lot of it going on over here with the bright areas of the image that the sun is directly blasting right here. So we have a lot of different options here. You're gonna have to tweak this to taste depending on your image, but one of the cool tools you can use is this mask mode, where it shuts off the entire image and you can just see the effect. So I can limit the source here because this is very strong. Smooth out that halation effect a little bit, and here we go. This is one of my other favorite ones. Kind of diffuse it just a touch. And then I'm gonna turn down this impact because it's having a massive impact on the image, and I just kind of want a subtle look. So if we turn off mask mode, go back to our image, I think that looks much better. Just kind of a reddish burnt glow. That looks kind of cool, and we can turn that off and then turn the halation back on, and I think that looks pretty cool. So I can go ahead, close that tab. Let's take a look at our bloom options next. This adds that kind of glowy look as if you put a Pro Mist filter on your lens, for example. So go ahead and turn this bloom on. You can see our image gets instantly just a little bit softer. And we can turn the preview. This is our original image. This is the preview of our film image. So you can kind of see a one-to-one preview. Now let's take a look at some of these options. Again, we have this awesome mask mode here. We can select that, and now we can just see our kind of diffused glow around our bus and our landscape here. So turn those highlights down a touch. I'll limit my source a little bit. The glow is a lot, and here you can change how detailed you want the glow or kind of blurred out a touch. Just kind of play with these settings, see what you like. Save highlights is a really important one to pay attention to. I usually keep that one at 100 just so your highlights aren't getting blown out or overexposed. And your impact here at the bottom is kind of your overall effectiveness of this tab right here. So I'll turn off mask mode. I think that looks pretty good. We can turn the tool on and off to see exactly what that glow is doing. And if it is very subtle, I think that is the best. If you don't notice something is completely, punching you in the face with an effect and it's very subtle, it tends to look more realistic. So that looks great for bloom. I'll go ahead and close that tab, and I will open the vignette tab. Let's go ahead and turn that on and add a nice vignette to our image. Let's look at this at about 50%. So our image is looking good. And in order to see this vignette better, I'm going to turn the feathering way down, and I will also turn the exposure down. Now we can really see this vignette and we can work with it a little bit easier. So I will adjust the size here about like that. We want to really focus on our VW bus and have the exposure kind of fade off, going from the center of the image out towards the edges. And we'll change the aspect ratio to make this a little more oval-like to fit this 2:3 image. And I think that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is scale up the vignette a bit, really feather it out, maybe even scale it up a little bit more. And then we really crank down this exposure just to show you what the vignette looked like. Now I'm going to back off a little bit. That looks pretty good. And I'll even feather it a touch more. So I think that looks pretty good. Again, we want the effect to be nice and subtle. We don't want it to really grab the attention of our audience. We want it to be there, but not be distracting from our image. So let's go ahead and turn that off and turn it back on. And I think that vignette does a great job at kind of bringing our attention here towards the center of the image. So I think this looks really awesome so far. But what if I decide to change my mind and I get this far into the image, I've edited all of these things and all of these tools over here, and maybe I want to go black and white instead. Maybe I really like this Ilford HP5 over here. So let's go ahead, let's click a new film profile, and you can see everything here on the right has stayed the same. I got to keep my vignette, I got to keep all of my bloom settings, all of my halation settings, and all of my film grain settings. So I can go through here, and again, I can just buzz right through some of these presets, and I can keep all of the tool settings that I initially had when I initially selected a film profile. So that's what's really cool about Dehancer. You can change the profile. Let's just say I decided Portrait 800. That looks kind of cool. I do want something, I think, black and white, or has some, crazy colors. I think the Kodak 250D is pretty cool. This Polaroid type film looks pretty neat. Ooh, I do like that. That looks pretty awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say this image looks good. I'm going to hit OK. And what it's going to do is import our film grain image. So we can go ahead, we can look at our original bus here. Very sharp, a very clean image. I took it with a very low ISO. I believe it was somewhere around ISO, here we go, ISO 100 if we look at these settings. I shot this on the Nikon Z6 with a 35mm Viltrox 1.8 lens. You can see it was in the evening, almost no noise at all. Very sharp image on that lens. But if we go ahead and we show our film grain image, a very grainy looking image, and I think this turned out awesome. It really has that old look to it, especially when you have a subject that is older and there's nothing in here. There's no brand new, Ferrari or Honda driving through this image to give any sense of time or a year. It's just a very classic, and it feels like an iconic image. Now, as I said before, I'll do most of my edits in Lightroom, get the image to where I want it, and then I'll go ahead and I'll make those tweaks with Dehancer. And it's absolutely up to your creative imagination how far you want to push your edits or how subtle you want to make them. But again, Dehancer is one of my favorite applications right now. It's an awesome plugin, and the cool thing about this app is the continuity between Lightroom and Photoshop. The plugin works the exact same way. So if we were to hop over to Photoshop over here, and we go to Filter, Dehancer, Dehancer Film, you can see the exact same tab opens up right here, and we can go ahead and page through these different film profiles. It works again the exact same way as the Lightroom plugin. We can hit OK, and you can see our effect has been applied. The one tip I will give you with Photoshop, let's hit Command Z to undo. I typically like to duplicate my layer. I will hit Command J, duplicate my layer, and then go ahead and go to Dehancer Film Plugin. And I'll show you why here in a second. Let's edit our photo. Let's actually go black and white, add some heavy film grain. I like that, hit OK. Now you can see we can go ahead, we can turn off that layer or that edit to our image. Otherwise, the Dehancer plugin makes a destructive edit to your image and will edit right here on your main layer and give you a flattened image back. If you create a new layer, it's kind of like non-destructive editing. I can turn down this effect. Maybe I want it half saturation. Or I can say, I don't like this at all. I can delete that layer and I can start over again. And maybe I want to give it a different look with Dehancer instead. So when using the Photoshop plugin, always create a second layer, do your edits to that layer, and then you can go back and you can start from scratch if you absolutely need to. So I really enjoyed this plugin. I want to say thank you again to Dehancer for providing me the license to really create some cool looking images. I had a ton of fun. Here's an example of the before image. Very sharp, very digital feeling. And then here's the after image. Made some grain, some other cool edits. Here's another pier over in Pismo Beach. I really love the way the grain turned out, the dynamic range, the glow. Just very happy with how that turned out. Also had a Mustang to borrow while I was at Pismo. There's the before, and here is the Dehancer film edit. We just kind of cut down those highlights, added some grain, played with the colors, added a little bit of glow, and I'm super stoked about the way that turned out. Here's another very clean, looking digital image. We'll zoom in here and take a look at this Mustang. And here is our dehanced image. Looks really cool. I have a bunch more of these. I had so much fun playing with this application. If you have any interest in film at all, this is a great way to save an absolute ton of money instead of shooting film and creating some really unique looks. Again, here's a before and here is the after. You can see that really cool halation effect between the white and the black, the high contrast areas of the scene. It just turned out really cool. Super excited. And again, one of my favorites is this VW bus here, almost sitting on the beach, and we got this really neat black and white image. That's why I chose this for the thumbnail. So again, I absolutely recommend Dehancer as an awesome plugin. They also make a plugin for DaVinci Resolve. I'm currently using DaVinci Resolve 18 and kind of learning the Dehancer plugin for DaVinci Resolve, and you can create some very cool looking cinematic color grades to your images with the awesome presets. It looks almost identical to the Lightroom plugin. Super awesome. I'll have another video on that in the very near future. So that's all for this video. Be sure to check out my links in the description. Give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. Until next time, get out and go shoot.